Hello and welcome to the latest from Hearts Standard. My name is Joel Sked and I am joined on this Sunday afternoon by Craig Cairns as we unfortunately have to react and look back at Heart Midlothian's 0-0 draw with Motherwell on Saturday. Before we do that, Craig, how are you?
Away from football and from work, pretty well. It's been nice to get some sun and enjoy the weather. It's been a really cracking week. But yes, as we're going to talk about, there isn't much positive to speak about on the football front.
Yes, and I do want to say a big thank you for all your work over the last couple of weeks, because I do appreciate everyone that will be tuning in and be well aware that you have had to carry the can, especially when Hearts are doing so poor, as I have been gallivanting on holidays. So
You deserve
thank
it.
you for that, and I appreciate that. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but both of us are back, and at a time where Hearts are just seem to get worse and worse. But before we get into that, a message from our sponsors. Heart Standard is brought to you by S1 Jobs. It's time to every time we do this, if it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. Now, Craig, Saturday, you were there covering it for Heart Standard, and I was unable to because one of my best friends had a wedding yesterday. So, in hindsight, I was very, very glad to be there instead. Although we did manage to, while we're having our meal, get the last little bit of the game on someone's phone. And yeah, it was to watch Shanklin's shot go past the post. Incredibly frustrating. But before we get to that, how did you find it all?
It was immensely nervy and immensely frustrating. I think those were the two kind of overriding things. I largely put my sort of fan things to the side when I'm covering matches, but I mean, even the sort of fan nerves got to me a wee bit yesterday. And I suppose there's a bit of crossover between being a fan and professionally, because your job's just that much easier if Hearts are winning games, and that goes for regardless of which team you're covering.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were definitely nerves there, and you saw that in the performance. It wasn't good. Motherwell played a slightly different way. I don't think Hearts quite got to grips with it, but even within that, there was moments where Hearts were just their own enemies, like creating like mistakes that they didn't need to make, and bringing the pressure upon themselves and making it nervy. The pass back from Forrester to Craig Gordon, Khartoum's two errors quite close to each other, which almost led to a red card before half-time. Somebody almost had to take a tactical foul, or I didn't quite see it. I didn't see it again, but it looked like both of them were on the edge of dangling a leg in and it may be going wrong. So, yeah, it was just overall, it was very nervy. What Hearts didn't work, and it was just frustrating. They didn't create enough chances, whereas at least the Dundee United one, you could say they've created a lot of chances and they haven't taken them. That's a different issue, but they weren't enough. There weren't enough chances. Even still, you look at that Khartoum one. If that goes in, it's a completely different afternoon, isn't it? But that's been Hearts for a lot of the season.
that's been the story of the season. Yeah, I watched it back just before this, so any hangover that was lingering very much disappeared as soon as I hit play on Y-Scout, because I don't think even that wanted to stay around to suffer those 97 minutes or whatever it was. But you talked about it being nervy, and there was elements of the first half where it felt like a game played between two bottom six teams, which they are deservedly so, bottom six teams, but played between bottom six teams after the split with nothing to play for. There seemed to be just a lack of kind of urgency or tempo, and again, I don't know if that was a consequence of the nerves that both teams came into the game and played with. And I know that Critchley kind of alluded to that in his presser afterwards, where he kind of talked about everyone was a bit tame and landing punches, and he did mention that Hearts were going there to win. Hearts didn't start they didn't play with the intensity of a team that really needed to win, certainly in the first half. And I suppose that on that, what did you make of I know we kind of didn't have much signal there yesterday, but texted back and forth just about the lineup. I thought it was going to change. I wrote about that on the Saturday morning. Thought it was going to change to a 4-2-3-1. It just seemed natural with James Wilson suspended. However, Critchley did put doubts in my mind just with what he said on Friday about how he seemed to be quite happy with how the team performed against Dundee United, and it suggested to me that if he could, he would be happy with the diamond, and that's what we saw. And it was Musa that came in for James Wilson, which meant Shankland and Cammy Devlin stayed on the bench. What did you make of the lineup, and talk me through the consequences of that lineup?
I was surprised it was a diamond again. I thought that, and not so much because of the Dundee United game. I mean, this might not be a popular opinion, but I actually think that Hearts were really good in the first half. Again, a different problem. They created the chances and didn't take them. And I think if...
This is Dundee United you're talking about?
Yeah, the Dundee United game the week before. Yeah. So I think if you keep doing that, then eventually you will start to take some of those chances, or hopefully you will start to get better at taking some of those chances. That's it. I mean, it's definitely a lot better, as I've said before, than not creating those chances in the first place. So I'm not 100%. In hindsight, I'm against it, yes. But going into it, I was thinking, well, if they play in the same way as they did against Dundee United, the first 40 minutes or whatever it was against Dundee United, then I could see why he has stuck with it. I think, again, he can only do so much. The players have to finish the chances. And then you could argue about the players he's picking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the way the game panned out, Hearts didn't create enough chances. Like I said, in that first half, until they changed away from the diamond, there was only really one clear-cut chance, and that was Cartoons. The rest were all kind of half chances or almost an opening and things like that. So it clearly didn't work. I almost got Forrester sent off, or Khartoum. Khartoum, I don't know if it was the shape or just they had a huge off day, but it didn't work for Khartoum. I think you can make an argument that Blair Spittle's gone off the boil since. I thought about this earlier, but I haven't looked into it. But it'd be interesting to see how many goals Cabangu scored pre and post diamond.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that we were talking about that before with Wilson, that he's now playing further away from the goal. He's now playing out in the right wing, and it's a similar thing with Cabangu, and not just there, but it was maybe like the worst case of it on Saturday against Motherwell. It was him playing on the left and away from the goal, whereas he was sniffing out openings in the box before that. So. Or running in behind defenders towards the box. I mean, I remember one game Spittle having a go at him for being too eager to run towards the box. And now, whatever's happened, he's now playing further away from it. So I can't remember what you asked me. There's just so much to go over and so much to cover. But I hope there was some sense in there.
No, absolutely. Because I think I did ask the consequences of the formation, and you picked out the two aspects which kind of stood out for me was. And certainly one of the things I'm going to write about for the analysis which will go out tomorrow is Cabangu was essentially a left winger, and there were so many instances that of Penrice playing into Spittle to then play into, so like Spittle's kind of inside, and then it was Cabangu wide left, or Penrice essentially running forward and Cabangu in front of him as you'd expect if he was playing to the left of an attack. So that was an issue. So then he just had basically had Musa through the middle, and Musa was ineffectual, and we essentially played without a right hand side.
Yeah, because
Forrester and Khartoum were so poor both in and out of possession. And again, I suppose they were the two players that I was in the running order to discuss. So, Khartoum. On you go.
It was an attacking shape. he's been playing that way to attack, and it didn't create enough. I mean, that was one of the points that I wanted to make. So it's clearly not worked because it's not created enough chances in front of goal. And you mentioned Musa there. Yeah, but again, with hindsight, it just doesn't look like it's not worked. Shanklin did more in the second half than Musa did in the first half. He's just so raw, Musa. Like his decision making's sometimes off. It's like there was one time where he got the ball and like rather than look behind him to see who was supporting, he just ran into a body of like 4 or 5 players or something. And sometimes his first touch is a bit erratic as well. So yeah, and I was going to say something else there, but I'll save that because I know that we're going to come on and talk about Critchley. So I'll maybe save that for after.
Just on, so I suppose you talked a wee bit about Khartoum, and then there's Forrester, and it's got to this stage now where you're just looking and you're just like, I just feel sorry for him. Is he being hung out to dry? I wouldn't say quite being hung out to dry, but
it just needs must, doesn't it? It's just needs must. We shouldn't be relying on him so much, but we just are.
It's really difficult situation just with the right back situation. Taylor being injured, Oyegoke being moved on. I know I can understand and probably leaning towards this myself. Talk of Lewis Nielsen playing there, just because I just think you are.
That was mash out.
Yeah, you're getting to the stage now where you're beginning to ruin him, and
or potentially so. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I'm not digging out 4-5-2. 4-5-2-3 ATF, but he's like Forrester's not going to make it. Need another right back to complete the season. That's his view, and I wouldn't. It's been difficult for him, but I do think that the more he plays, the more views are going to be like that because he's struggling so much, and you see his confidence has just been rocked massively, and he's just.
I'm loath to criticize him too much for that game against Motherwell because he's quite exposed in that shape. You've just said that Hearts pretty much played with a right hand side, and that's not the first time that's happened in a game where he's either opposition teams target him, and there's in this shape there's often a lot. He has to do a lot one-on-one defending, and he can be exposed at times. But Khartoum didn't do him any favors yesterday either. There was times where he was chasing things back because of Khartoum's mistakes. So yeah, and Khartoum's quite an experienced player. So I'm loath to criticize him too much for Motherwell. I mean, it's a collective thing. We're not trying to pick out individual people here, and I know you're not. But yes, a lot of the reason that he is playing so much is driven by circumstance, and one of them, and again, this is kind of creeping into a subject we're going to talk about after. But I mean, how much? Who's to blame really there? I mean, it's not Forrester, right? But it's Critchley to blame because it's like the only option he has. Oyegoke was sold pretty much under the feet of Critchley. Now I know Critchley understands that that's the arrangement and that's the way things work. But I don't think Critchley didn't exactly say that. I don't want this guy anymore. Surplus to requirements. You can sell him if a bid comes in. It sounds like it all came out of the blue and very quickly. It all happened very quickly, and hence why a replacement wasn't brought in. If it had been the summer, it would have been a different story, and then maybe we'd have brought in a replacement. But it's like mid-season, so who's to blame for Forrester being the only right back that Hearts have?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of ways to look at it, and I think
not that I'm looking for somebody to blame.
No, I know. Like but you look at Oyegoke, and I think that was a view that maybe Hearts. I don't think Hearts seen him long term, and they had an option to move him on for money, and they've taken it. And then Gerald Taylor gets injured. He's obviously struggled since coming back from injury, but also I don't think
it would have been the same issues with him playing.
Yeah, and then and then in terms of bringing another right back, I wonder if the right back who just signed, if Hearts looked to bring him in even sooner and just weren't able to do it. And then in terms of the shape, I do think there's Critchley in terms of the Forrester we're talking about is not helping. Critchley's not helped Forrester with the setup, as you mentioned, and when you could have played, if you just play with someone in front of him, whether it's Musa or Alan Forrest, yes, both are not long-term solutions at right mid, but both at least provide some sort of protection on the right side. But yeah, again, it points to an absolute just a mess. It's just been a mess, and this season has been a mess. And I'll bring in some of the comments later on, because there's loads, and understandable, because fans are angry, frustrated, fed up, annoyed, etc., etc. Now we go into the second half. Hearts, Critchley made a double change. Musa came off, as did Khartoum, not unsurprisingly, and Lauren Shanklin came on with Cammy Devlin. Hearts went to basically a 4-4-2 or 4-2-4, however you put it, and there was improvements, and Hearts were the better team without still testing the Motherwell keeper Balcombe. So what did you make of the changes and the second half?
I mean, it was a shape that I would have liked to have seen from this. I did say a couple of weeks ago that I wanted Hearts to go back to the 4-2-4. I think it was a podcast I did with Laurie. I think, and I was kind of indulging myself in saying that I felt like it was the most fun I'd had watching Hearts this season when that was kind of in free flow. But it got that one got really exposed at times as well. I mean, I don't really know what to make of it. Again, it was a weird one, because obviously everybody knew what was going on in the other game, and it was swinging about, and there was a point where, because St Mirren don't take the lead until they go ahead at one point, but then Ross County pull it back, and St Mirren don't take the lead until late on. And so there is a point where you don't know if a point's going to be enough. And again, I felt like that. The game was played like that. I felt like even I wasn't analysing Motherwell's performance as much, but you felt like it was the same with them. There was like a sort of not knowing whether to go for it or not. So I think that Hearts were better in the second half in terms of chances created. I think they were a bit more open, and Motherwell were a bit more of a threat. But I still don't think it was enough. And I think we've seen that a few times in matches this season where Hearts have needed to throw everything at it. And not that they haven't tried to throw everything at it, but it just doesn't. There's been a few occasions where it doesn't feel like there hasn't been a bombardment at the end of the game when they are searching for a goal, for some sort of important goal in some important game, in the many that they've failed in this season. So, yeah, it was another one of those. You can look at it and say they're maybe a little bit unlucky. Shanklin's one comes off the line, and then he's one at the end. He's quite unlucky with that as well. It's just past the post. Another day maybe finishes that. If he's a bit sharper, last season, as we all keep saying, he finishes that. But in the end, it still was just too little, too late.
Yeah,
they got what they deserved. It was a second half performance that again kind of felt like a bit of a microcosm of the season. That there was flashes there. There's clearly some good players there, but there's just something not working. And when it comes to the crunch, they're lacking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there was more. Yeah, there was watching it. There was more territory. Like Hearts are playing higher up the pitch and winning the ball higher up the pitch. And there's I'll put it in the analysis people to do. But like for example, Shanklin most shots with 5, 3 more than any other teammate. Touches in the box. Shanklin's most.
I saw him still getting stick. 10. Now I know that I understand where that kind of comes from. Again, it's built up over the season, but again, he's far down the list of people that deserve stick for. He was one of the people that almost won the day. Yeah. Again, I mean, you could argue that he maybe should have. That one that he ballooned was terrible. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted your list of stats.
No, it was just to say basically Shanklin more than twice as many shots than any teammate, twice as many touches in the opposition box than any teammate, and this is him coming on in the second half. Passes into the box, Cammy Devlin joint highest with Blair Spittle. So yeah, it just showed that Critchley got his starting 11 wrong, or or he's set up wrong, or if he could have changed it quicker, because you asked him about it in the press conference, like, talk me through your changes at half time. He said it wasn't working in the first half. Just be more proactive, especially when you're watching it thinking this is rubbish. Motherwell, they were there for the taking. I thought they were looking at them. Hearts were poor, but they were really poor as well. They couldn't really put too many passes together. They weren't overly comfortable or confident in possession. So maybe change it sooner. And then I go back to it, and yeah, Shankland at the moment is this season has split the support. There's some who don't want him to play between now and the end of the season. Some were more than happy for him to go at the end of the season. But you look at it, and two of your best players are sitting on the bench for a essentially what's going to turn out to be a must-win game, and you're having to turn to them at half-time. I just think, it was a mess.
And even then, just before you do, just on Shankland and Cabangu and Shankland linked fairly well in that second half. But again, most of what Cabangu was doing was runs down the left wing and cutting it back and things like that. It wasn't shots and chances at goal. And we've seen in the last couple of matches, in fact, it was in the first half, I think the closest they got was on that inside left channel. There was another one. What was the game before? Was it the game Dundee United? Yeah, the one kind of decent save that Walton makes in the first half against Dundee United. Again, he's really wide of goal. I think he does quite well to work the goalkeeper from where he is, because he's got a defender close and it's a bit of an angle. But again, is that the formation, meaning that his starting position and he's just more on that side? I don't know. It just seems like you say, it seems like he's playing more of a left winger now.
Yeah, and I mean, there was certainly out of possession. Grant was the highest player. Grant was like basically playing as it looked like 4-3-3 with Grant as a centre forward. I was like, what are we doing? I'll bring in. There's loads of comments. I'll bring out some. Just read a number of them just to get because it'll lead us on to our next port of call before we finish up, and it also gives a flavour of what fans are feeling. So and that these will be all over the place, so I've just favourite them at different times. But Xander says, apart from Critchley's failures, is there a possibility players have been told in advance that they'll not get new deals, or told to find another club and have downed tools? Just on that, I actually thought it was a different question, but the Critchley talked about in the build up to the game. I understand what he was saying, but it was almost a case of kind of read the room, where he said that the players should deserve credit for being in the hunt for a top 6 place. But I'm just like, they should also deserve criticism for being in such a situation to begin with obviously the worst start to the season, and now we are outside the top 6. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something in it with this. Everyone's well aware that there's going to be changes in the summer, as there needs to be. Graham, Gorgie Boys podcast.
Can I just add on that?
Yeah, go for it.
There about, he came in. He came in when they were 12th, right? So, and winless in the league. So yeah. I think there's probably a decent chunk of Hearts fans that if you had said at that point, without describing how it was going to come about,
yeah,
that Hearts would go into the final day before the split with a chance to get into the top 6. I think there'd be a decent chunk of Hearts fans that would have taken it, because let's be honest, there was a lot fearing the worst after those first 8 league games, was it? So in that sense, I can see where he's coming from. But at the same time, with how tight the league's been, I mean, if you look at it now, Hearts are now 5 points. I just wrote it yesterday now and I can't remember. 5 points off 11th in potential relegation playoff or something like that. Now, that's very unlikely. It's quite small points wise, but you're requiring a certain set of results for all those teams to get above Hearts.
Yeah,
is quite unlikely. So whether the points overturn isn't like difficult to do. Dundee could very well make up 5 points on Hearts, is what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, Kilmarnock make up those points and Ross County make up those points. That's when it becomes less and less likely. So it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But the point I'm making is like getting into the scraping into the top six, given how tight the league is, still wouldn't be that great an achievement.
No.
And the fact that Hearts have missed out on it, and their immediate priority is now to make sure that they're in the Scottish Premiership next season, however unlikely that is, as I said, that's quite damning. And as you said, it's the same. He's not going to throw the players under the bus, is he, like that? But
No.
it's the same players that got themselves into that mess in the first place and gave themselves an uphill battle in the first place.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got ourselves in a position where you're thinking, you know what, third isn't out the question, and then the last 5 games has seen us go from thinking, oh, third could be possible, to going, well, we're in the bottom 6 and just having to pick up one more result to ensure we don't get dragged into a relegation playoff. Not great.
Do you remember a recent time when we just needed one result?
Yeah, I know. It's
2 recent times.
We
get
just
the top 6 and the Europa Conference League.
But that sounds like, I know we'll discuss this we'll discuss this nearer the time with the Aberdeen game, but it's just like you don't trust this team to win a game that matters.
I'm sure the Aberdeen fans don't after today as well, though.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, it's going to be a horror show. Graham says, where is the leadership on the park? Where are the players taking responsibility and looking to make things happen? There's something. There was a moment in the game of Khartoum, which I'm going to allude to in the analysis, where he just didn't want the ball, even when he was in a good position. Mojo J says, board failure time and time again. Cheap managers, cheap players, whilst fans empty their bank accounts from the team every week up and down the country. Shameful. Sanders said, felt like Critchley frozen on the spot, wasn't brave enough to go for the win. He was hoping a draw would be enough and St Mirren would slip up and save his bacon. Ben says, it's really hard to be positive now. The only thing we've got left is this cup, and it's massive opportunity to get to the final. Unfortunately, it's a big game. Yeah, and a big game and an opportunity. 2 things that Hearts have not been good at taking up this season. I need to hide that. Comments of this is, there we go. Oh no, it's back again. Sanders says 14 points behind third when Critchley came in 26 games later. We were 13 points behind third. Is this enough progression for him to remain? The diamond needs to be binned, Graham says. It's too predictable and players don't look comfortable. Next week we can't play Forest or we get torn apart. Cal6 says, no knee-jerk reaction, but this continued pure judgment decisions regarding managerial appointments needs addressed. We need a better calibre of management as top priority. Good form in January and February, now being undone with the last few games. 2 really poor performance under Critchley. Names 10-man Kelly away, Ross County, Aberdeen apparently, and bloody I've favoured a lot. So where do we go from here? Barring a miracle in the cup, it's been a terrible season. Yesterday was inexcusable. Players did not seem to be up for it at all. Graham says about Hearts not being in top 6 is a disgrace. And read out finally Peter McCarthy. This is a big one. I would rather see Nielsen or Milne in for Forrester on the diamond. It seemed as though we needed to go to that shape because we had just sold Boateng. Devlin was out, and all we had was Benny. I really don't know why he didn't revert to how he had set up once Devlin came back. That change has also been the reason to why we aren't seeing half the impact from Spittle and Penrice. Agreed. Critchley has ruined it himself. He sets the team up if the players aren't feeling in that formation. I think the comment continued, but there wasn't enough space for it to be finished. So there was plenty of stuff in there. Apologies if I did not read out your comment, but I suppose we'll finish up. And the last bit was kind of what now. A lot of people mentioned it there. What now? I can answer that myself. Is Aberdeen on Saturday? We'll talk about that more in depth, but it really does feel like that's a huge game for Critchley. Massive game for Critchley. Certainly in the eyes of fans, I think if he loses that, then he's at the point of no return amongst fans.
Yeah,
the majority of fans, I should say.
That's exactly my thoughts. I don't know about vast majority, but I think there would be a vocal amount that would be against it, and then even then, the same people would probably just be waiting for the cup final to just pausing their judgment until the cup final, and then he'd maybe have to win that to change their mind. So yeah, I do think we're possibly already at the point of no return, for not in terms of Critchley and his job, but in terms of Critchley and winning some fans back. Because the start of next season's a long way away, and to go into that with that pressure hanging over you all over the summer, that's difficult. And Scott McIntosh made a really good point on a recent Scarves Around the Funnel, where he was talking about the board are in, I wouldn't quite word it the same way he did, but the board are in a bit of a pickle here, because if they decide to stick with him, which I think they probably will do, and he gets off to a bad start, that's the worst case scenario. They stick with him, they back him over the summer, and he gets off to a bad start next season. And then we're in the
same position.
The Hibs cycle. We're in the cycle that Hearts used to laugh at Hibs about giving a manager, backing a manager, they almost did it with Gray there, backing a manager, them picking up a wee bit towards the end of the season, giving them the summer, and then getting rid of them around September, October time. Hearts are running the risk of starting to do that. Already did it last season. So yes, it becomes a question for the board. I mean, say we're talking about Hearts don't win against Aberdeen, which the form probably suggests right now. I know Aberdeen are no great shakes at the moment, but as I've said recently, they have been improving a bit. Then yes, the board have got, I mean, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. That's a really difficult stick or twist decision to make.
I think probably lose against Aberdeen. I think the decision is a lot easier losing to Aberdeen than it is losing against Celtic in the cup final. But I agree with both. It would just be like losing against Celtic. It would just feel like kicking the can down the road, and like you compared it to Hibs, where kicking the can down the road, then discarded the can, and then 6 months' time, the can's reappeared. It's.
And what I think could happen as well, and I don't want this to be mistaken for my opinion, because I think people did a little bit when one of the articles I wrote to this effect. But if what's happened at Brighton is anything to go by, if Hearts are employing the same kind of analytical model, I mean, I know it's going to be tailored for here and all that kind of stuff, and so I don't know exactly, but Brighton a few years ago went through a really, really poor spell, and there was lots of noise to get rid of the manager. The name escapes me right now. But their analytics were telling them that they were creating enough chances. I mean, you already sound like I'm describing Hearts to that extent here. It's creating enough chances. They're performing well. It will turn, and they stuck by the manager, and he did. And they went on to have like an incredible season the next season. I'm not saying that's directly analogous with Hearts, but I'm just saying what the possible scenario is and what I think could happen. As you say, the result next week will have a big say, but they could very well be looking at the data and think they're performing well. The signing rate from January is looking pretty decent. This player's improved, that player's improved. Pre and post Critchley, the chance creation here, and could very well stick with them because of that. That's what Hearts have bought into. So that is potentially what is going to happen, and they will stick by him even if results don't come immediately between now and the end of the season. If they see enough in performances, that's what we've bought into, and that's what could end up happening.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right, and that's kind of what led Hearts to Critchley. But then on the flip side, I read a really interesting. I was on holiday. Read a really interesting article about Union Saint-Gilloise.
Already Xander's asking who's improved. Just curious. I mean, I just said this is not. I started a disclaimer at the start. This is not my opinion. This is what it could be. This is a potential scenario. So I'm not going to list players who's improved because I was just saying this is not my opinion. Sorry, Xander.
No, and no, I read a really interesting article from around on the Athletic about Union Saint Germain, and it was their majority shareholder who used to be the minor shareholder, and he talked about how they've changed managers quite often, and it's just which is because even if they've been successful or not been successful, they've changed quite often. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
Sorry, Xander, I'm probably just a wee bit riled up from Twitter earlier. I put up what I thought was an innocent tweet, and people were, I don't know if they were purposefully or not, but people were just reading the first 4 words and arguing with me over that. So sorry, I'm probably a little bit riled up about that. Truce.
we will leave it there. We've both been riled up enough by having to watch Hearts this weekend, just like everyone else who is watching and listening. Thank you very much, everyone, for continuing to watch and listen, even when we're having to discuss rubbish performances, rubbish results, and that's it. We'll be back at some point later on the week. When that is, I'm not too sure, but we'll be obviously looking ahead to the Aberdeen game and kind of seeing what pops up during the week. Until then, hope everyone has a good week and enjoys it better than Saturday. Goodbye.